Welcome to the discussion, diving deep into the intense world of global power plays and war rhetoric.
I'm all in, excited to tackle these heavy topics.
We're looking at a content piece where Professor Jeffrey Sachs, during his appearance at the 80th UN General Assembly, discusses how NATO is really escalating the war rhetoric in Europe, while also hinting that somewhere in the Middle East, tensions are steadily mounting toward war.
Yeah, that contrast is really striking. Europe with heated rhetoric and the Middle East heading towards conflict.
Exactly. It's like we're seeing strategic failure on two different fronts. Sachs isn't mincing words. He's labeling NATO as warmongers, and that term alone ignites a lot of debate.
That definitely grabs your attention. Do you think that kind of language helps clarify the issues, or does it, oversimplify the geopolitical complexity?
That's a great question. I mean, on one hand, the intensity of the rhetoric draws attention to the dangerous state of affairs.
Yeah,
On the other, it may oversimplify things, painting all of NATO with one broad brush and potentially bypassing the nuanced realities of security concerns.
yeah, exactly. It's like you're trying to set the stage with stark contrasts, but it might ignore some deeper layers of international strategy.
Right. And Sachs's message here is not just focusing on Europe. He points out that the escalation in war rhetoric is paralleled by a similar, if not greater, potential for conflict in the Middle East. This duality of crises makes you wonder about the broader, interconnected implications.
Definitely. It's almost as if global stability is on a precipice, isn't it?
It sure is. What strikes me is how he navigates the discourse. He uses his platform at the UN to highlight the dangers of provocative language while also acknowledging that the actual strategic interests might be pushing things even further than the rhetoric suggests.
That's tough because if you dampen the tone too much, you risk losing the urgency of the issue, but if you hype it too much, you might, fuel unnecessary panic.
Exactly. It's a balancing act, almost like trying to walk a tightrope. You need assertiveness without tipping into sensationalism, but Sachs seems to lean into the incendiary aspects, calling NATO warmongers.
Right. And did you notice that Sachs's position is also wrapped in a broader critique of how diplomatic efforts are handled?
Absolutely. He emphasizes that the provocative stance might be as dangerous as overt militarization. It raises the question, are these harsh words merely rhetoric, or are they reflective of a deeper systemic issue in international alliances?
So it's not just a matter of words, but also about how those words translate into policy and potential military actions, right?
Yes, exactly. The content suggests that while the rhetoric is blistering, there's a real risk that such language could spiral into actual conflict if diplomacy fails. It almost feels like a dangerous feedback loop of escalating tension.
That's an interesting way to look at it, as a feedback loop. But don't you think focusing so heavily on the aggressive language might overshadow important diplomatic nuances?
I get what you're saying, and it's a valid concern. But then again, the piece is intentionally provocative to force public awareness on the underlying shifts in
Yeah.
global strategy. It seems that Sachs wants to shake the complacency that might come from more conventional diplomatic speeches.
That makes sense, although I worry it might also amplify polarization. When you label a bloc as warmongers, might that not entrench certain views further?
Absolutely. And that's where the debate really heats up. It's like, is it more effective to call out aggression in bold terms, or do you risk deepening divisions and shutting down constructive conversation?
Right? It's very tricky territory. So does the content provide any context or historical insight on how we got here?
Yes, it does. Sachs, and the discussion around his UN participation, touches on the historical patterns of alliance politics. It's like he's drawing parallels to past conflicts, suggesting that current events seem eerily reminiscent of previous eras of heightened tension.
That historical anchoring definitely adds weight. Yet sometimes I wonder if relying on history might risk oversimplifying today's very complex, technology-driven global dynamics.
That's a thoughtful point. It is a double-edged sword. While historical context helps illustrate recurring patterns, today's scenario, with new players and cyber dimensions, demands an even more nuanced understanding.
Yeah. So, in a way, the narrative might be criticized for mixing sound academic insights with a bit of old school dramatic flair.
Precisely, and that's where some critics come in. They argue that using polarizing terms might, sometimes undermine the very careful skepticism that diplomacy requires.
Right? Because if you demonize one side too strongly, you might muddy the waters when it comes to finding actual resolutions.
Exactly. And yet, the content does serve as a wake up call about the dangers of unchecked aggression and escalatory rhetoric. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our global order.
True. And it also ties into the broader conversation about what international alliances mean in a multipolar world.
Absolutely. The underlying message is that conflict, whether in Europe or the Middle East, is not a localized event. It's reflective of a global shift where the boundaries of traditional geopolitical actors are blurring and the risks of escalation are spreading.
That's a compelling way to put it. It almost beckons us to think of global crises not as isolated incidents, but as part of a larger, interconnected web.
Exactly. It's like every spark has the potential to set off a chain reaction. It's like, dropping a pebble in a pond.
Yeah, definitely. And in today's world, even a small misstep could potentially trigger a massive conflict, which is why such discussions, even if they're a bit intense, are so necessary.
For sure. But let me challenge one aspect here. While the dramatic rhetoric captures attention, could it also be argued that this approach oversimplifies complex geopolitical realities? I mean, isn't there a risk of turning intricate issues into binary narratives?
That's a fair critique. The danger with such rhetoric is that it can polarize the public, making it harder to arrive at balanced, pragmatic solutions.
Right, and in that sense, we need to constantly question whether a narrative focused solely on confrontation truly serves the goal of promoting lasting peace. It's a bit like using a hammer where perhaps a scalpel is needed.
So, while the content effectively highlights the critical state of global affairs, we must also be careful to not let the dramatization overshadow more measured, constructive dialogue.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even in times of crisis, maintaining a balanced perspective is crucial. The call for urgent action should ideally be paired with calls for careful, thoughtful diplomacy.
And that's a challenge for all analysts and policymakers: how to engage the public without fanfare, while still conveying the seriousness of the situation, right?
Exactly. It's about crafting narratives that are both honest and, constructive. Sachs's approach, with its bold language, certainly shakes things up, but it also leaves room for deeper analysis of the underlying issues.
I agree. It seems we're left with a lot more questions than answers, yet these discussions push us to rethink and re-examine our assumptions about global security and diplomacy.
Precisely. In a world where alliances and conflicts are constantly in flux, it's essential to face these uncomfortable questions, even if the answers are messy and complex.
Yep. And as global citizens, recognizing these interconnections is key to, working toward a just and stable international order.
Absolutely. The narrative here reflects not just immediate tensions, but also a broader call to reassess how we approach international conflict and dialogue.
Right. It's a potent reminder that behind every headline and polarizing label, there's a reality that demands careful thought and balanced action.
Yes, indeed. And while such content can be polarizing, its purpose is to spark debate and ultimately encourage us to delve deeper into the intricacies of global politics.
I guess that's the takeaway: keeping the conversation alive and questioning narratives that seem too black and white.
Exactly. In these turbulent times, every perspective matters, and every critical voice helps to shape a more informed global discourse.
Thanks for this engaging conversation. It certainly leaves us with a richer understanding of the stakes involved and the complexity behind the rhetoric.
Absolutely. Till next time, let's keep exploring these intricate dynamics, always questioning and aiming for more balanced insights.
Agreed. Take care and keep those critical questions coming.